What's up, YouTube? I was thinking about making this video for a while about what may have caused engine problems from around 2010 2020 on the 2.4 engines, non-turbo, and 2.0 turbo engines on all Hyundai, Kia. It's all across the world, not just North America, in Korea, South Korea. I don't think in North Korea. South Korea as well. So obviously most of us already know that Hyundai came with sort of an excuse at the beginning of this problem somewhere in 2012. Before the recalls, they said it has to be something with manufacturing process. They didn't they didn't clean enough small bits of metal shapes, and that clogged oil passage and some blah blah blah. The problem is the problem kept going on. So I think that may have happened maybe in some factory, but it's not the actual reason for all these defects, and it may actually be more than one reason. So this is, let me just say in advance that this is just my opinion from what I think a little bit myself. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I'm not saying I didn't design engines. So it's just maybe from a mechanical point of view, from what I've read on the forums, deductions, what I've seen on YouTube. There are a couple of people who show parts, internal parts of blown engines, Kia, Hyundai. So it's just a deduction. So feel free to comment, feel free to disagree. And also I'm going to say most of the things at the beginning of this video, a few minutes, but I'd like to just keep talking for longer, so the video may show longer. Stay with me if you want. I'm just driving now, so just spend some time with me. So okay, so that was the shavings, metal shaving blocking possibly oil passages, and that may have touched a few of the engines. But first off, there is one interesting aspect, is not all the engines have been touched by this issue, or at least not at early miles. I've seen on forum people saying maybe 5, 10, 15% perhaps of all the engines who have been replaced under warranty. And by the way, I have videos, and there's warranties in Canada, United States. In Canada, it's up to 200,000 kilometers replacement, but you really need to have all the paperwork, all the maintenance bills. Oil replacements in Canada, they say it's severe interval because of the winter. They require us to replace the oil every 6 months, or I believe it's, correct me, but it's 6,000 kilometers, about 4,000 miles. So very soon, even if you use synthetic, I use synthetic, and I do recommend you use synthetic. So I think to sum it up, the issue with these engines, besides that shaving stings, which may have affected a few of them, is both a design, mechanical design, and engine management issue. So maybe there are two aspects. Each of these aspects may have several aspects that may have affected. No. That's a 60, 70 years old lady. Anyhow, there may have been a design, mechanical design issue, and engine management issue. And let me just go straight to one point. Hyundai, before 2010, if you have an older Hyundai from 2000, 2005 or so, you may remember that those engines were really not fuel efficient. They were not gas guzzler, but they were just pretty heavy on gas, those V6 and stuff. So my thinking is somewhere around after 2010, there may have been a Hyundai CO or something like that, and they really wanted to switch their engine design to make the engines much more fuel efficient. So you may wonder, what's the point, what's the relation between fuel efficiency and engine blown? It's just my feeling from what I've seen, and I will explain in detail, that this emphasis this really preoccupation about making the Theta and Theta 2 engines, the 2.4 and 2.0 turbo, so fuel efficient may have actually caused premature wear on some engine parts. So you have this mechanical design on engines, which is pretty basic, but also you have the engine management part. And Hyundai may have stressed so much the engine management part to save fuel that it had caused too much premature wear on usually on the connecting bearing rods. I just imagine a scenario when there has been surely a discussion with the engineers, with the Hyundai managers, and the CEO perhaps was stressing so much, I really want a very, very, very fuel efficient engine. We are going to implement a lot of changes, technical novelties and so on. And at some point, maybe the mechanical engineers, the chief engineers into the mechanical design may have said, yes, but if we really put all these things in place, let's go. Why are you just blocking it? If we put all these things in place, it may, the way the engine is designed, it may put too much stress on some mechanical parts. And perhaps, and I will explain in a moment what I mean by that, perhaps the CEO said, I really care at this point a lot of about fuel efficiency, so it's just an engineering thing. You know, engineering is not perfect in any way. There's also management in engineering, and there's conflicts and so on and so on. So one of the things I did realize is these cars, this is a 2015 2.4 non-turbo, but the turbo may be the same, is that, you see, I'm cruising now, but it happens also in city driving. So there's three modes. There is eco, normal and sports mode. And in the eco, normal and normal modes, but also sometimes in a sports mode as well, it feels that the engine management actually is transmission management. It's really trying to keep the transmission into the highest gear, and that keeps the RPM at many situations very low. So I've seen my RPM struggling at about, usually it goes as low as 1200 RPM, 1200 RPMs, but sometimes even close to 1000 RPM. And you can hear at that moment the engine is overstressed. You can hear that very low RPM kind of, you know, the low frequency noise when the engines are really at low RPMs. You can hear that sound, and the car keeps keeping that RPM when you are cruising, sometimes even going a little bit uphill, and this is stressing the engine. These engines are not V8s, these are two four cylinders engines, and low RPM means low torque on these engines, so the engine doesn't have that power to push the roads. So perhaps maybe some engineer can just comment on this, but perhaps at those moments when the engine is really sitting on low revs, there is that the film, perhaps the oil film at the road bearings is getting diminished, and that may start causing very small wear, but within 10,000 of miles or so, that tiny wear accumulates in time, so it's just accelerating basically. So I've seen this car, it has such a tendency to keep that very low RPM, and this may be perhaps one of the causes. I'll just give you my tips right away. Right now I'm cruising and it's revving at 1500 RPM, 1500, and I will say that should be the lowest you should accept. You should not drive below 1500 RPM, maybe 1400. The scale is too small, like to really judge it properly. So don't keep your engine, in my opinion, try not to keep your engine below 1500 RPM. And even more when maybe you are driving inside the city, or maybe you are climbing a hill on the highway at higher speeds than I am now. Try to, and this is what I do, I would just downshift myself. So this is automatic 6-speed, I think, and has manual shifting. I would down speed 1 gear, sometimes even 2 gears, to keep the engine above 1500, and sometimes even above 2000, 2500, to just give it enough torque for this specific situation. And I will definitely try not to cruise my car, even inside the city and also on a highway. I will not try to cruise my car when I hear the engine making that low frequency noise at 1200 or so. I'll just switch my gear and downshift the gear basically and put it in manual mode. This is just preventative, obviously. Another thing that you can do is, so Hyundai on the non-turbo engines, it says it's recommending to use 5W20 oils. It's thin. The 20 grade, when the oil is hot, it's thin. It doesn't really save you, and the reason actually they are recommending, and most manufacturers recommend that oils, is because it saves you maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 3% gas. Is it really worth the risk on these specific engines? I don't think so. So I'm using W30 oil, and I do recommend synthetic oil. Be careful if you switch from mineral to synthetic, the engine is going to start consuming, at least in my experience, especially in older engines, but just check your oil every day when you switch to synthetic. Make sure you monitor the oil level. It can drop a lot, and it's going to stabilize after maybe 1 year, depends how much you drive. It's going to be stable, but the first time when you switch from mineral to synthetic, always pay attention to the level, and I mean by the day, not by the month. So I would switch to synthetic. I would use on the non-turbo engine 5W30 oil, and it seems on the turbo engine Hyundai started to recommend, they had in the owner's manual they put, I think, 5W20, and then there was a technical bulletin where they switched to 5W30 for the turbo engine, and it seems it's even actually better to use perhaps 5W40 on the turbo one, or 10W40 if you are in a hotter area all the time, not cold winters and stuff. So switch to a thicker oil in the summer. Maybe ask your dealership just to make sure they are okay. If there's any problem with the engine, they don't bother with the oil grade being higher. Just make sure for yourself, because they may cause you problem if it's happening to need to replace the engine. So that's what I do. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm just saying what I do. I don't keep the engine at those low revs, and I use synthetic, and I use a small, slightly higher grade of oil. If you look on internet, on YouTube videos, there are a couple of YouTube videos, go search for them, search something like blown, I opened, it's not my video, I opened a blown Hyundai or Kia engine or something like this, and see what these guys found on the internal parts on the engine. They found usually two things. First, and by the way, just so I don't forget, when you need to replace a turbo engine, be sure you replace also the turbo, not just the block. The turbo also gets wear, gets metal shavings, debris, and you need to replace both units in the turbo ones. Anyhow, so inside this engine, it appears there is a lot of wear on the connecting rods bearings. So there's just like small pieces of metal. It's not ball bearing, it's just small layers of metal that act as a bearing with a tiny film of oil in between the parts, so there's no physical contact. But there seems to be a lot of wear on those bearings. And well, some people are going to say, yeah, because you didn't change the oil. Yes, obviously there are people who don't change the oil in time, but it's widespread, so it's not an oil change problem here. It's really a very early on and accelerated wear on those road bearings, which actually on a good design, good engine design, there should be basically no real wear on those bearings. But you'll find the bearings, basically the metal, it's diminished to nothing. So it's really a accelerated and very early on bearing road, bearing wear. The other thing that I find that's interesting is that there is what's called piston slab. So basically the piston slides inside the cylinder, and it should slide really aligned with the cylinder. But on these cars, it seems that the piston has a very small rotation movement inside the cylinder, which causes wear, and it's not normal wear both on the cylinder side and on the piston side. And this is not normal. You see, you open other engine on other cars, could be any BMW, Honda, and there is with 200,000 miles, and there is no wear on the cylinder wall. You'll see those cylinder lines from the manufacturer is still intact. On Hyundai's, you'll find wear, really severe wear on the walls. So this is kind of consistent with the low RPM situation, because on the low RPM situation, the piston may not be aligned properly with the engine. Maybe that's also, I'm not sure, but maybe that's also what's causing that low frequency noise. If you ever drove a manual car, you know what that low frequency or low RPM is, the sound of the engine. So the engine is stressed. So that wear on the cylinder walls and piston sides, that is consistent with low RPM situation, continuous and extended low RPM situation. That's why I was pointing at that low RPM thing. So those were the two wears that the videos are presenting on blown Hyundai and Kia engines from that time. And again, that points with low RPM situation. And now you may say, yeah, but just don't drive in the eco mode. Well, I do drive in the eco mode, but I just don't let it go that low RPM. So it's just a matter of management. Even in the normal mode, it still wants to keep the low RPM, and even in the sports mode, sometimes it wants to keep the low RPM. And I found out that actually the sports mode is really not practical in this car, the way the engine is managed, because it keeps those revs so high all time. It's I don't know, it's sometimes just too busy, the engine is too busy, so it's difficult to drive the engine in the sports mode. Right, so these are about my observation on these engines, and perhaps what may help them last longer. RPM thing, downshift to keep it higher, oil maybe higher grade, and synthetic. Be sure if you buy one of these cars, you have all receipts. If you don't have oil change receipts, all of them from the beginning of from the very first day when the car was new. If you don't have them, you are really taking a chance. It seems, from what I've seen, the turbo engines may have started consuming a lot of oil before they blow. So pay attention to this. And also the non-turbo engines, it seems this kind of actually what happens oftentimes is the engine will seize, and this seizing is particular in that if you, let's say, in that it actually happens all of a sudden without an engine noise prior to it, without a knocking. Usually an engine, when it blows from maybe lack of oil or something like this, it makes a lot of noise before blowing. It's still going on, but it makes a lot of noise. But it seems on these cars, you see now I'm going uphill, I'm going to downshift my gear, so to keep RPM at least 2000 in this situation. So it seems when the non-turbo engines blow, perhaps the turbo too, I don't know what about turbo, that it seems they blow all of a sudden and may even seize all of a sudden on the highway. That's actually what triggered the NTHSA recall, because it was a safety concern. So it can put you in a scary situation actually. And yeah, usually Hyundai, Kia will replace the engines, but you need to have the receipts. By all means, no receipts, you are going to get into trouble. It's going to be really expensive. I suggest you still try to contact headquarters for your country, not just the dealership. May try switching dealerships. You just contact directly the Hyundai, Canada, Hyundai US, Hyundai California, Hyundai Australia, Hyundai Korea, whatever. And be careful. I just wanted to add, you may wonder why maybe not all engines had this problem if it's an RPM problem or lower RPM problem. That may actually make sense if you think that it depends on the driving situation. So some people will drive at such speed under such conditions, street conditions, road conditions, that their car is going to hit the low RPM much often than other people's. So if you may be driving most of the times on a highway at I don't know, maybe 75, 85 miles per hour, RPM is going to sit higher. So maybe is not a problem, but someone that has a secondary road and the gear is keeping the RPM close to 1001 to 200, and it's even climbing maybe small inclines, that car may be the one that's going to have an engine blow. So that's perhaps a possible explication why only a part of the engine had this problem. It may be really related to the driving conditions that will keep the RPM lower for some of the owners. Let's just see, because I was saying about the low fuel consumption, MPG. It's just I drive really slow. I mean, I think it's like 53 miles per hour and 85 kilometers per hour. But you will see what's 5.8. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.